get the water. Shit. Hello, people. Okay, I didn't get no water. Oh, hold up. I found water close by. Good. Hello, hi, good evening. Good late night. Let's be real. It's really late in the night. It's 11:05. But it still counts. So, we are going to be reading 2 Kings 12 through 14 and Psalms 104. And from there, we can go to bed. That's it. It'll be a good day. My lips are chapped, so let me just like, give it a little bit of, because sometimes it makes it easier to move your lips and, to move your mouth. These things are important when you're about to do all of this reading. So we're gonna enter into 2 Kings 12 now. Joshua repairs the temple. Joshua began to rule over Judah in the 7th year of King Jehu's reign in Israel. He reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. His mother Zibiah from Beersheba, his mother was Zibiah from Beersheba. All his life, Joshua did what was pleasing to the Lord's sight because Jehudiah, the priest, instructed him. So yeah, this is the son, this is the 7-year-old kid who's put on the throne, and he does what is pleasing to his Lord all his life because the priest Jehudiah is instructing him. So that pretty much means that, like, Jehudiah had a lot of power politically at that point in time. Yet, even so, he did not destroy the pagan shrines, and the people still offered sacrifices and burnt incense there. One day, King Joshua said to the priests, "Collect all the money brought as a sacred offering to the Lord's temple, whether it is a regular assessment, a payment of vows, or a voluntary offering. Let the priests take some of that money to pay for whatever repairs are needed at the temple." But by the 23rd year of Joshua's reign, the priests had still not repaired the temple. So King Joshua called for Jehudiah and the other priests and asked them, "Why haven't you repaired the temple? Don't use any money for your own needs. From now on, it must all be spent on temple repairs." So the priests agreed not to accept any more money from the people, and they also agreed to let others take responsibility for repairing the temple. Then Jehudiah, the priest, bore a hole in the lid of a large chest and set it on the right-hand side of the altar at the entrance of the temple of the Lord. The priest guarding the entrance put all of the people's contributions into the chest. Whenever the chest became full, the court secretary and the high priest counted the money that had been brought to the Lord's temple and put it into bags. Then they gave the money to the construction supervisors, who used it to pay the people working on the Lord's temple, the carpenters, the builders, the masons, the stone cutters. They also used the money to buy the timber and the finishing stone needed for repairing the Lord's temple, and they paid any other expenses related to the temple's restoration. Okay? The money brought to the temple was not used for making silver bowls, lamp snuffers, basins, trumpets, or other articles of gold or silver for the Lord's temple. It was paid to the workmen who used it for the temple repairs. No accounting of this money was required from the construction supervisors because they were honest and trustworthy men. However, the money that was contributed for guilt offerings and sin offerings was not brought into the Lord's temple. It was given to the priest for their own use. Okay. The end of Joshua's of Joash's the end of Joash's reign. At this time, King Hazael of Aram went to war against Gath and captured it. Then he turned to attack Jerusalem. King Joash collected all the sacred objects that Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, the previous kings of Judah, had dedicated, along with what he himself had dedicated. All this time, went to war with Gath and captured it. Then he turned to attack Jerusalem. So then King Joshua collects all of the sacred objects that these various kings have dedicated. Okay, so he collects all of this, and then he sent them to Hazael, along with all the gold in the treasuries of the Lord's temple and the royal palace. So Hazael called off the attack on Jerusalem. The rest of the events of Joash's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. Joash's officers plotted against him and assassinated him at Beth Millo on the road of Siliah. The assassins were Jozachar, son of Shimith, and Jehozabad, son of Shomar, both trusted advisors. Joash was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. Then his son Amaziah became the next king. Betrayal! Yeah, they probably didn't like the fact that you gave away all of the Lord's gold, the royal palace's gold, and everything that three generations worth of kings had dedicated to an enemy nation. That probably was the last straw for them. Yeah. Jehoahaz rules in Israel. Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, began to rule over Israel in the 23rd year of King Joash's reign in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 17 years, but he did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He followed the example of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, continuing the sins that Jeroboam had led Israel to commit. So the Lord was very angry with Israel, and he allowed King Hazael of Aram and his son Ben-Hadad to defeat them repeatedly. Then Jehoshaphat prayed for the Lord's help, and the Lord heard his prayer, for he could see how severely the king of Aram was oppressing Israel. So the Lord provided someone to rescue the Israelites from the tyranny of the Arameans. Then Israel lived in safety again as they had in their former years. Okay. But they continued to sin, following the example of Jeroboam. They also allowed the Asherah pole in Samaria to remain standing. Finally, Jehoshaphat's army was reduced to 50 charioteers, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers. The king of Aram had killed the others, trampling them like dust under his feet. The rest of the events of Jehoshaphat's reign, everything he did, and the extent of his power are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. When Jehoshaphat died, he was buried in Samaria. Then his son Joash became the next king. Joash rules in... no. It's not Joash, because we already had that. This is Jehoash. Jehoash, because son of Ahaz, Jehoahaz, began to rule over Israel in the 37th year of King Joash's reign in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 16 years. But he did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He refused to turn from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel to commit. The rest of the events of Joash's reign and everything he did, including the extent of his power and his war with King Amaziah of Judah, are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. When Jehoash died, he was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Then his son Jeroboam II became the next king, or took the throne. That's what I was going to say. Elijah's final prophecy. When Elijah was in his last illness, King Jehoshua of Israel visited him and wept over him. My father, I see the chariots and charioteers of Israel, he cried. Elijah told him, get a bow and some arrows, and the king did as he was told. Elijah told him, put your hand on the bow, and Elijah laid his own hands on the king's hands. Then he commanded, open the eastern window, and he opened it, and then he said, shoot. So he shot an arrow. Elijah proclaimed, this is the Lord's arrow, an arrow of victory over Aram, for you will completely conquer the Arameans at Aphek. And then he said, now pick up the other arrows and strike them against the ground. So the king picked them up and strike the ground 3 times. But the man of God was very angry with him. You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times, he exclaimed. Then you would have beaten the Arameans until it was entirely destroyed. Now you will be victorious only 3 times. Then Elijah died and was buried. I want to read this in its New King's translation because I remember, not New King's, King James, not the new version, just the regular one. I remember this vaguely, and I just think it hit better with. Is there no comparisons here? No, to copy, share. Why no comparison? That's my least favorite thing about the website instead of the app. But it's okay. 18. We'll compare it. Alright, so I read the New Living Translation, and in King James it says, and he said, take the arrows, and he took them. And he said unto the king of Israel, smite upon the ground. And he smote thrice, and stayed. And the man of God was wroth with him, and said, thou shouldst smite 5 or 6 times. Then thou hadst smitten Assyria, till thou hadst consumed it, whereas now thou shalt smite Syria only 3 times. Dang, okay, so that's not the translation I was thinking. Okay, well, here's the New King James. Then he said, take the arrows, so he took them. And he said to the king of Israel, strike the ground. So he struck the ground 3 times and stopped. Then the man of God was very angry with him and said, you should have struck it 5 or 6 times. Then you would have destroyed Syria till you had destroyed it. Then you would have struck Syria till you had destroyed it. Now you will strike Samaria only 3 times. Okay, well, that's that. Maybe it was just the sermon then that I'm remembering and not the actual verse. But the example here is that when you are given the chance to destroy your enemies, who's telling you to stop? Like, who Why are you stopping? Why aren't you throwing? Yeah, you're throwing punches at the air like you're practicing, right? So you're in whatever rehearsal, you're getting it in, you're getting your practice in, whatever that may be, whatever that looks like to you, and you're going strike, strike, bam, bam, strike, strike, and you stop. You're like, oh, I'm tired. No one tells me to keep going, whatever. But like, if you had continued, who told you to stop? Why are you stopping? I guess that's what really should be asked. When you're going after something, every time you stop, ask if you really went after that with everything you had in you, and if you stopped for survival and not for any other weak excuses. I'm saying that strong, not for any other weak excuses, because honestly, it's important that we recognize we are putting immense limiters on our abilities daily. And there, I will stop. All right, then we move on to 2 Kings 13:20. Then Elijah died and was buried. Groups of the Moabite raiders used to invade the land each spring. Once, when some Israelites were burying a man, they spied a band of raiders. So they harshly threw the corpse into the tomb of Elijah and fled. But as soon as the body touched Elijah's bone, the dead man revived and jumped to his feet. King Hazael of Aram had oppressed Israel during the entire reign of King. Hold on, we're gonna brush over this with one verse. hold on, right? Okay, so Elijah died and he was buried, but during this period, I guess a time jump, maybe, I don't know, groups of Moabite raiders used to invade the land each spring, right? Once some Israelites were burying a man, they spied a band of these raiders, so they hastily threw his corpse into the tomb of Elijah and fled. So they stopped burying him properly and they just kind of like threw him next to Elijah. And when that body touched Elijah's bones, the dead man revived and jumped to his feet. That's crazy. That's like, it's one thing for God's prophet to be able to perform miracles, when he's praying and he's fasting and he's pleading with the Lord, and he's like, yo, please God, why spare this child's life, blah blah blah, da da da, and he's saying the words and he's doing the actions and he's stretching himself out over corpses, and there's a revival. But to revive a person that was being buried, had been dead for who knows how long, and was being buried in the tomb. This person clearly had all of the signs of death, right? And then his body touches the body of Elijah, who is dead, a man of God that is dead. And his body has enough spiritual power, enough of God's spirit in it, that it was capable of reviving this dead body that touched his body. So Elijah's out here performing miracles, even in his deathbed. Guys, that's crazy. That is crazy. Okay, all right. I just finished talking about limits. There are no limits. Okay, Then Elijah died, and we got through that, and he jumped to his feet. So now we're on 2 Kings 13:22. King Hazael of Aram had oppressed Israel during the entire reign of King Jehoahaz. But the Lord was gracious and merciful to the people of Israel, and they were not totally destroyed. He pitied them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. To this day, he still has not completely destroyed them or banished them from his presence. King Hazael of Aram died, and his son Ben-Hadad became the next king. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoaz, I don't know. Jehoaz. Oh, I think there's more of that. Jehoaz recaptured from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the towns that had been taken from Jehoash's father, Jehoaz. Jehoash defeated Ben-Hadad on 3 occasions, and he recovered the Israelite towns. Okay. Amaziah rules in Judah. Amaziah, son of Joash, began to rule over Judah in the 2nd year of the reign of King Jehoash of Israel. Amaziah was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother was Jehoaddin from Jerusalem. Amaziah did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight, but not like his ancestor David. Instead, he followed the example of his father Joash. Amaziah did not destroy the pagan shrines, and the people still offered sacrifices and burned incense there. When Amaziah was well established as king, he executed the officials. He executed? Like executions? Okay. When Amaziah was well established as king, he executed the officials who had assassinated his father. However, he did not kill the children of the assassins, for he obeyed the command of the Lord as written by Moses in the book of the law. Parents must not be put to death for the sins of their children, nor children for the sins of their parents. Those deserving to die must be put to death for their own crimes. Amaziah also killed 10,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt. He also is the Valley of Salt where Lot's wife turned to salt? Where did Lot's wife turn to salt? Sodom. Yeah, she looked back while feeding Sodom. She turned into a pillar of salt. But then was it called? Did they dub it the Valley of Salt? I'm gonna look it up. Let's just look up Valley of Salt specifically. Valley of Salt. The Valley of Salt is between Judah and Edom in the south of the Dead Sea. Any spot anywhere. So far, I'm not finding any correlation, so I'm gonna keep it moving. 2 Kings 13:7. Amaziah also killed 10,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt. He also conquered Selah and changed its name to Joktheel, as it is called to this day. One day, Amaziah sent messengers with this challenge to Israel's king Jehoash, the son of Jehoaz, the grandson of Jehu. Come and meet me in battle. But King Jehoash of Israel replied to King Amaziah of Judah with this story. Out in the Lebanon mountains, a thistle sent a message to a great mighty cedar tree. Give your daughter in marriage to my son. But just then a wild animal of Lebanon came by and stepped on the thistle, crushing it. You have indeed defeated Edom, and you are proud of it, but be content with your victory and stay home. Why stir up trouble that will only bring disaster on you and the people of Judah? But Amaziah refused to listen, so King Joash of Israel mobilized his army against King Amaziah of Judah. The two armies drew up their battle lines at Beth Shemesh in Judah. Judah was routed by the army of Israel, and its army scattered and fled for home. King Joash of Israel captured Judah's king, Amaziah, son of Joash and grandson of Ahaziah. He did this at Beth Shemesh. Then he marched to Jerusalem, where he demolished 600 feet of Jerusalem's wall, for the Edomite gate to be the corner gate. So he demolished 600 feet of Jerusalem's wall, from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate. Okay. He carried off all the gold and silver and all the articles from the temple of the Lord. He also seized the treasures from the royal palace along with hostages, and then returned to Samaria. The rest of the events of Jehoash's reign and everything he did, including the extent of his power and his war with King Amaziah of Judah, are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. When Joash died, he was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel, and his son Jeroboam II became the next king. When Jehoash died, okay. King Amaziah of Judah lived for 15 years after the death of King Joash of Israel. The rest of the events of Amaziah's reign are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. There was a conspiracy against Amaziah's life in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But his enemies sent assassins after him, and they killed him there. They brought his body back to Jerusalem on a horse, and he was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. All the people of Judah had crowned Amaziah's 16-year-old son Uzziah as king in the place of his father Amaziah. After his father's death, Uzziah rebuilt the town of Elath and restored it to Judah. Jeroboam II rules in Israel. Jeroboam II, the king of Jehoash, began to rule over Israel in the 15th year of King Amaziah's reign in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 41 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He refused to turn from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and he refused to turn from the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel to commit. Jeroboam II recovered the territories of Israel between Lebo-Hamath and the Dead Sea, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, had promised through Jonah, son of Amittai, the prophet from Gath-Hepher. For the Lord said, For the Lord saw the bitter suffering of everyone in Israel, and that there was no one in Israel, slave or free, to help them. And because the Lord had not said he would blot out the name of Israel completely, he used Jeroboam II, the son of Jehoash, to save them. The rest of the events of the reign of Jeroboam II, the son of Joash, to save. Wait, what? Huh? Oh, I see. Okay. The rest of the events in the reign of Jeroboam II and everything he did included the extent of his power, his wars, and how he recovered for Israel both Damascus and Hamath, which had belonged to Judah, are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. When Jeroboam II died, he was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Then his son, Zechariah, became the next king. Psalms 104. Let all that I am praise the Lord. O Lord my God, how great are you! You are robed with honor and majesty. You are dressed in a robe of light. You stretch out the starry curtain of the heavens. You lay out the rafters of your home in the rain clouds. You make the clouds your chariots, you ride upon the wings of the wind. The winds are your messengers, flames of fire are your servants. You placed the world on its foundation so that it would never be moved. You clothed the earth with floods of water, water that covered even the mountains. At your command, the water fled. At the sound of your thunder, it hurried away. Mountains rose and valleys sank to the levels you decree. Then you set a firm boundary for the sea so that they would never cover the earth. So that they would never again cover the earth. You make springs pour water into the ravines so streams gush down from the mountains. They provide water for all the animals, and the wild donkeys quench their thirst. The birds nest beside the streams and sing among the branches of the trees. You send rain on the mountains from your heavenly home, and you fill the earth with the fruit of your labor. You cause grass to grow for the livestock and plants for the people to use. You allow them to produce food from the earth, wine to make them glad, olive oil to soothe their skin, and bread to give them strength. The trees of the Lord are well cared for, the cedars of Lebanon that he planted. There the birds make their nest, and the storks make their homes in the cypresses. High in the mountains live the wild goats, and the rocks form a refuge for the hyraxes. You made the moon to mark the seasons, and the sun knows when to set. You send the darkness, and it becomes night, when all the forest animals prowl about. Then the young lions roar for their prey, stalking the food provided by God. At dawn they slink back into their dens to rest. Then people go off to their work where they labor until evening. O Lord, what a variety of things you have made. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Here is the ocean, vast and wide, teeming with life of every kind, both large and small. See the ships sailing along, and Leviathan, which you made to play in the sea. They all depend on you to give them food as they need it. When you supply it, they gather it. You open your hand to feed them, and they are richly satisfied. But if you turn away from them, they panic. When you take away their breath, they die and turn again to dust. When you give them your breath, life is created, and when you renew the face of the earth. Life is created, and you renew the face of the earth. May the glory of the Lord continue forever. The Lord takes pleasure in all he has made. The earth trembles at his glance. The mountains smoke at his touch. I will sing to the Lord as long as I live. I will praise my God to my last breath. May all my thoughts be pleasing to him, for I rejoice in the Lord. Let all the sinners vanish from the face of the earth. Let the wicked disappear forever. Let all that I am praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, y'all. That was... He did. He made a variety of things. He made a variety of things, and they coexist. They have a rhythm to it. They have a rhythm to it that, if anything, we're throwing off kilter, okay? There's an essence there of wisdom, of serenity, of kindness. Lions don't prowl during, like, there are certain nocturnal animals that are nocturnal. He gave us the day, he gave them the night, and in that we find balance. The problem is we also want the night for ourselves. My takeaway for today, I don't know. There wasn't really much of a yeah, that body that came back to life after getting smashed onto, I mean, not smashed, but after touching Elijah's dead body, like, we not gonna talk about this more? Why don't we talk about this more? Like, that is power. That is power. If that explains, if he had that much power left in his body after death, how much power did he have when he was alive? Yes, they're explaining, oh, he did all these miracles, he performed all of these things during his life. He was a great, powerful prophet, a man of God. Yes. But, yes and, not but, yes and, in his death, he was capable of reviving a man who was long since passed, because it touched his corpse, because the man's corpse touched Elijah's corpse, and it was revived. What limits must you have when you're a man of God, when you're a woman of God? What limits must you live in? I mean, yes, there are things that we walk away from. There are things that we don't do, but it's not like, I feel like no one, if I could think of a casual, like, the things that Christians keep them away, the things that Christians don't engage in, and the world turns around and be like, oh, you know, they holier than thou, whatever, blah, blah, being all Christian, you know, whatever, they throw shade. It's like, everyone grew up knowing not to touch things that were burning hot, you know? And when I walk by a stove and I don't touch put my hand on the hot burner, no one's looking at me going, oh, you know, she thinks she holier than thou, blah, 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 throwing shade. That's what I feel is the equivalent when you're following, like the spiritual equivalent. When you're following God, and there are certain things you don't touch because you know that it's a hot burner and you're going to get burned. Like, why are you throwing shade? Just because I know and you don't know for some reason. You could know, but you don't want to know. So, I'm not going to touch that hot burner. You may not see that it's on. You may not notice that it's hot and that it's burning me. But I know it's hot and that it's burning me. And so, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to shy away from it. I'm going to keep it out of me. This tangent. This tangent was to explain that, like, people want to say we give sacrifices, and then there's the whole combination of, like, The closer you draw to God, the more you realize where your sins are and what sins you committed. And even sometimes there are blank sins that you didn't realize, you still don't realize you're committing. But you feel the pressure. You start becoming aware of which burners were on and which burners were off. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. The power of God is not to be trifled with. Okay? Is not to be trifled with. Is not to be underestimated. Is not to be limited. You know, because logic would have dictated Elijah's dead. He can no longer perform any sort of revival, any sort of miracle. Elijah's dead. That's it. He's buried in his tomb. Yet, his body was capable of restoring life to another man. His dead body was capable of restoring life to another man. And I mean, it's not as crazy as being carried off and charioted away by angels of heaven. But that's power. Like, that's power. Like, I don't even know how I was to explain it. That's my takeaway. That's power. This is what it is. It's power. Like, he spent his entire life being plugged into a life source, God, being plugged into the ultimate life source, God, and life source. And that's evident even in his death, even in his corpse. Yeah. If that don't change the way, I feel like that's gotta change the way. Just change the way you limiting that spirit of God within you. Please. Change the way you are limiting that spirit of God within you. Please. Because, like, why? What's the limits? Why are you stopping? Like, what's holding you back? What's going on? Okay? If God says go, you go. If God says stay, you stay. If God says jump, you say how high. It's just because that is the power. He is doing that for your benefit. Oh my God. It's like I'm walking blind through an obstacle course. And God is giving me the directions. He's just like, yo, go left. And then I go right because I don't know my left or right. You know what I mean? You know when you hesitate, you're like, oh, no, wait. And then you turn around and you go back. No, the other left. I might be losing my mind. That's okay. I'm losing my mind so I can find my spirit. Yes. Yeah, that is all, okay? Bye bye, y'all. Bye bye.